Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for spending some time with me tonight, and let's talk about some baits that I'm going to be throwing in March if we do have some fish starting to spawn. So the majority of your fish on the lake right now are pre-spawn. Probably very few of them have spawned unless maybe you live in Florida. But otherwise, most of the country, there's very few spawners. Now, there are fish moving to the bank for sure, but they're still in that pre-spawn mode. And the best way to catch them, chatterbait, spinnerbait, lipless crankbait, those types of baits that wobble and shake and move and vibrate, best pre-spawn type baits. But you're going to start seeing fish lock in and spawn. So I want to give you 3 spawning baits that I like to use in the early part of the spawn. So I'm not fully locking in. I'm not throwing a wacky rig. I'm not just fishing for spawners. I am fishing for bass that are going to be in the pre-spawn and the spawn, and you can kind of catch a combination of both with these baits. So lowland reservoirs, highland reservoirs, and then kind of mix types of fisheries that I've just seen where these baits work really well. So, all right, here's the deal. So if you are fishing a grass fishery, typical grass fishery, lowland type reservoir, a speed worm is just an awesome pre-spawn spawn bait. This is the big one. Zoom makes it. Pretty much every company makes it with some kind of kicking tail there on the back. Very important. And this is a bait that you can fish slow and you can swim it. You can just kind of fish like a Carolina rig and just move it, and it's really effective in spawning flat areas and areas that have grass. So one of my favorite grass baits, anytime I'm fishing a lake that has grass and the water's warmer than, 55, 60 degrees, a speed worm is something I'm going to at least try. So you got to try a speed worm. Now, there's a couple other situations where a speed worm just doesn't work really well, and that's highland reservoirs. You get off the bank a little bit and you're out in 50 feet of water. The banks are steep, and a worm just isn't a great offering for those types of lakes. So what I really like when you have those fish that are starting to spawn, some pre-spawners, you're fishing little bank transitions, great little pre-spawn spawn areas, is a finesse jig. There's something about that smaller jig. Fish really key in on crawfish. And for whatever reason, that is just one of those awesome baits that you always see play in the pre-spawn tournaments on highland reservoirs. So a finesse jig, very good bait. I use it here on Guntersville a lot when the water's colder, but it's just a really good bait around highland reservoir fish, on transition banks, spawning fish. So the last one would be on lakes that they're not really highland, but they've got steeper banks and they just don't have grass in them. A Carolina rig, and even lakes that do have grass in them, a Carolina rig works everywhere. But I've really seen this work in like drains, points, places where the fish would typically spawn in a little bit deeper water. A Carolina rig is just a killer bait, because what tends to happen in those lakes that don't have any grass, those fish are really going to be using the whole bay. You can pretty much have them spawn on a stump or something like that, but they could be anywhere. And the best way to cover a bunch of water is with a Carolina rig. So something that I really like to do on places that don't have grass, I can just fish the whole point. I can run back and fish the drain, and I'm really being effective while still covering, because you're pretty much fishing a needle in a haystack type places. So that is a Carolina rig, great for spawning / pre-spawn fish. So those are my 3 baits. I start to tie them on now, keep them honest depending on where I'm at, and it just really tends to work out, because it's kind of a weird time. You're throwing your vibrating, moving, shaking, wobbling baits and you're not getting bit. That's when you got to kind of slow down and fish a spawning type bait, and usually you'll have good results. So try that, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.